This video is brought to you by Mubi. Get 30 days for free by going to mubi.com/nowyousee it. Like many other franchises and ensemble films, the X-Men series had the challenge of juggling several character arcs while still maintaining a story that spans over multiple films. In fact, the biggest influence on the X-Men sequel X2 was another sequel from another huge franchise. You may have heard of it.
May the Force be with you.
The production team referred to X2 as the X-Men equivalent to the Star Wars sequel The Empire Strikes Back. Both films made established characters split apart and come to their own realizations. X2 effectively adapted this concept for its own characters, film, and film series. And the scene that best captures how the film executes this idea is when Xavier and the X-Men infiltrate the Oval Office to warn the president of the coming war in the third X-Men film. The scene takes place after Stryker tried to brainwash Xavier into using his powers to wipe out all mutants. Xavier tells the president what happened and reminds him that the mutants aren't going anywhere, and in the future, humans and mutants need to work together to bring peace.
We're here to stay, Mr. President. The next move is yours.
At first glance, the scene may seem like just an easy way to set up the sequel, but it's actually packed with an impressive amount of depth, finishing up several character arcs and summing up the movie itself, all while looking awesome. So let's take a look at how this excellent scene gives closure to the struggles of multiple characters in the film and addresses the main theme of the entire X-Men franchise.
In this time of adversity, we are being offered a moment.
Before we even see any X-Men in this scene, we get hints that multiple mutants are about to show up. First, we see lightning and hear thunder, and we instantly know it's not just bad weather, it's the mutant Storm. Storm's powers always signal her arrival before we see her, and it reminds us of an earlier moment in the film when she did the exact same thing. Then the president notices everyone is frozen in place, so we now know Xavier is involved too, because everybody freezing reminds the viewer of a similar moment in the beginning of the film. So before we even see the mutants, the visuals of the scene prime the viewer for the epic payoff of the team appearing in the Oval Office.
Good morning, Mr. President.
And the combination of freezing characters and using lightning creates an amazing image. But the final scene goes beyond cool visuals. The dialogue is actually extremely multi-layered. For such a seemingly simple scene, it's filled with character payoffs that neatly tie up the events of the film. For Logan, Xavier's speech makes him empathize with Cyclops.
And there have been casualties. Losses on both sides.
And they sort of come to terms with each other in the next scene. And he also got another more subtle moment. Throughout the film, there's a recurring theme that Logan abandons people.
You'll be here when we get back. Unless you plan on running off again.
I could be the good guy.
Logan, the good guy sticks around.
And he later fulfills this prophecy.
Where's Logan? He's gone.
But in the end, he rejects that past self and embraces his role in the X-Men. By the time he's at the White House, he completes this character arc when he gets a line saying he'll stick around.
We'll be watching.
Similarly, Xavier's dialogue also calls back to his actions in the film. In this scene, the X-Men give the president files that show Stryker was trying to kill all the mutants.
How did you get this?
Well, let's just say I know a little girl who can walk through walls.
With such a diverse group of superheroes, there were tons of ways for Xavier to get those files. I think the writers wanted Xavier to have the little girl from his school get the files because it reminds us of earlier in the film, when Jason Stryker used an illusion of a little girl to mind control Xavier. The film even refers to both the illusion and the actual student as a little girl.
But she's just a little girl.
No, she's not.
Like many other X-Men movies, Xavier's character arc revolves around his ability to nurture younger mutants, and because he gets captured, he's unable to protect his students from the government.
But now and then, every mother needs to get away. Without her, the babies are helpless.
The illusionist who mind controls Xavier is a former student who Xavier failed to save. Jason's a living example of Xavier's fear that he won't be able to help his students. At this point in the movie, Xavier can't protect them and he can't use them to do good. It's actually turned into the opposite. Instead of mentoring students, a student now mentors him, giving him instructions on what to do. The whole scene puts Xavier at his lowest, harming mutants instead of mentoring them. But once he's at the White House, he has repaired his mentor-student relationships. He now mentors a little girl from his school to use her powers for the greater good.
How did you get this?
Well, let's just say I know a little girl who can walk through walls.
By connecting the illusionist and this scene with a similar character, the dialogue shows Xavier has moved on from his failures as a teacher and has resumed his role as a caring mentor. And even without any dialogue, the other characters in the scene get their own moments. Earlier in the film, Rogue and Iceman both wanted superhero uniforms.
Why don't we get uniforms?
Yeah, where's ours?
They're on order.
Should arrive in a few years.
And by the final scene, they've already got them, showing that they've proved themselves as X-Men. And it's cool to have Nightcrawler back in the Oval Office because it reminds us of the opening of the film, when he acted much differently there. His small back and forth with the president in this scene reminds us that his character was nothing like the menacing monster from the opening scene. In a way, he gets a small bit of redemption by showing the president his true self. Just like with Logan, Xavier, Rogue, and Iceman, Nightcrawler got a moment in this scene to show his transformation. Nightcrawler's redemption in the White House signals some broader payoffs in the story as a whole. The film begins with a mutant creating chaos in a United States government building, initiating the tenuous relationship between the mutant community and the government. In direct contrast to the chaos of the first scene in the White House, this one feels methodical and exact. Instead of the camera whipping around in confusion, it moves slowly and with purpose, and instead of everyone being thrown around, they are perfectly still. It brings a sense of conclusion to the tension in the very beginning that set off the plot of the film. But this scene goes even deeper than just this one movie. The entire franchise of X-Men deals with one central question: should mutants work with humans or fight against them? This scene shows a little bit of both. Xavier trusts humanity more than Magneto. That was the central disagreement of the first X-Men film. But after the events of this movie, Xavier has clearly seen the potential danger of the government knowing the whereabouts of every mutant. When given the option, the government let Stryker try to destroy all mutants, and that event changed Xavier's strategy towards dealing with humans. You can see his transformation when comparing the White House scene with the other time Xavier froze humans. In that earlier scene, he freezes to stop mutants from using their powers in public.
And the next time you feel like showing off, don't.
But this time, he lets the president see their power so Xavier can send a message. So in this scene, the mutants act a little more like Magneto. They do show what they're capable of in an intimidating way, but they still make it clear that they want to use that power for good.
Mr. President, this is not a threat. This is an opportunity.
In a first for the franchise, Xavier no longer completely relies on the goodwill of politicians. This time, he extends an olive branch, but he also makes sure that the president knows the mutants won't go down without a fight.
We're here to stay, Mr. President. The next move is yours.
So not only does this scene wrap up the arcs of individual characters, but it also wraps up the collective arc of all the mutants, both in this film and in the film series up to this point. Through their collective struggles, the mutants learn to no longer hide in the shadows, and instead to use their power for the betterment of themselves, their entire race, and humanity. And after looking at this scene closely, the influences from The Empire Strikes Back become perfectly clear. Both films have characters who mature, a new cast member who gains the trust of the group, and a mix of uncertainty and hope at the end. The fact that both these films used very similar tropes to tell such different stories shows the brilliance behind this narrative structure. They both set up the conflict, give characters their own personal struggles, and then reunite those characters to fulfill their individual arcs and bring the entire story to an end. And X2 managed to pack a lot of that payoff all at once, in one excellent scene. Many blockbusters, including other X-Men films, set up a sequel by sticking a small teaser into the post-credits. But in this scene, X2 not only laid the groundwork for a sequel, but also perfectly wrapped up the conflicts within the characters and the film itself. Based on the presentation of this scene, it's no surprise that the original X-Men series easily managed storylines for many characters at once, and set the standard for world building in a large cinematic universe. This video is part of the One Excellent Scene series about the X-Men film franchise. We all handpicked a scene we love from the X-Men to show what makes these films great, and for a similar personal, curated experience when it comes to exploring more films, I highly recommend Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service that shows exceptional films from around the world. What makes this service stand out is that every day Mubi presents a new film, hand-selected by their team of curators, so you'll always have something great to watch. They have tons of timeless classics, award-winning masterpieces, and festival fresh gems, the kinds of films I definitely want to be watching more of. To start, I'd recommend watching Junoon, a fascinating documentary directed by Paul Thomas Anderson about the making of the album Junoon inside of a giant fort in India. You can try Mubi for free for 30 days at mubi.com/nowyousee-it. That's mubi.com/nowyousee-it for a whole month of great cinema for free. A big thanks to Mubi for sponsoring, and thanks to you, our patrons, for your support. If you want to support our work directly, join our Patreon. Thanks for watching.